it's easy for me to talk about the value of the arts from the private sector when talking about, trying to attract talent, bring people to the community. But I'd be interested in how you see it as, someone who works in the public sector, how you think about investment in the arts and what role you think the arts play in making a strong community.
Well, I think one of the key drivers for any community to be successful is to have an investment in the arts. One of the key things that we notice now is when companies and people are looking to relocate to places, they look at the totality of the community. It's not just whether their job is going to be fulfilling, what it's going to pay, things like that. They want to know where their children are going to school. They want to know the streets they're going to live on, the neighborhoods they're going to move into, and they want to know what kind of offerings there are on the cultural and arts front. So it's very important for places like the Taubman and the Jefferson Center and a lot of other places that offer different cultural and artistic outreaches. One example I can think of in particular is that there's a company in the region that regularly has visitors from all over the country and from all over the world, and they regularly bring them right to the Taubman when they get here as an example to show the commitment that the region has made to the arts and the culture. So it's very, very important.
And as someone who's focused primarily in our urban center, I see that all the time. People are coming to Roanoke and trying to get their bearings and get an orientation of the place. And the first thing they ask is about, what kind of amenities does Roanoke offer? And everyone loves our mountains, and I'm the first. But their second, focus really is, where are the arts? What's there to do in this community? And so, for us, it's really been vital to see the success that we have made in developing a thriving arts community. But then also just seeing how much more we could do. So I think of guys like Richard Florida who talk about the creative class, and what a creative class means to a community like ours. And, that's why from the private sector, it's been something we've been proud to support. And the public sector has been great. The city has been a real partner here. And I wonder what your thoughts are about that model, about this public and private sector model of co-investing in the arts, and how you see that for the Cultural Endowment going forward.
I think it's absolutely vital. I think the city makes an investment every year in a number of different institutions through a grant process, through a number of different things, and we'd like to try to curate the atmosphere for investment in the arts and for different offerings that are going to be offered, not just within the city, but within the region. I think you find all the local governments invest in the arts and in culture in different ways. For us, just looking at downtown, it's a coincidence that it happens this way. But when you look at the fact that you have this art museum, this fantastic structure at one end of downtown, and then the Jefferson Center at the other end of downtown, those are both huge commitments to the arts. The Taubman has its own resources and its own endowment, but the city owns the building that the Jefferson Center is in. And so when people come, they see that deep commitment that is made to, and those are just two of the examples of what is happening in our community. But when people come and see that commitment, it's such an important thing to be able to show that we've invested heavily in the arts and in culture. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. And from the foundation's perspective, one of the things that we see is at least 25% of any nonprofit, and healthy nonprofit in the community, looks to provide, for stable funding. And it's not always for capital, or for buildings, but a lot of times it's just for operating parameters. One of the things that I hope that we can do collectively, as we think about the arts, is too often I think we think about the arts as charity, rather than as an investment, and as a critical part of the infrastructure of a healthy community. Whether it is as an employer. If you take the arts as an aggregate in Roanoke, they would represent the largest private employer in the community. Or as an investment, if we think, because an investment in the arts, I believe, directly and indirectly results in more than $3 coming back to the community in terms of increased tourism, in terms of employment tax, and in terms of consumption in the community. So I hope that over time we can help shift the conversation to focus it more around what the arts do for the community, rather than just thinking about it as a public charity or a philanthropic effort.
And to build on that point, I think it's important to communicate to the average person how important that is. I think people like us who are involved in the arts, who, whether it's directly or tangentially, or who do the work in economic development or developing communities, we understand the importance of that. But I think it's vital for the city, for anyone who's involved in the arts and in developing communities, to understand and communicate to regular people what that impact is. A good example of that is a town out of state that a friend of mine lives in. Their library is 50 years old, and the public library has not been refurbished, rehabbed at all in 50 years. And so they put a referendum up in the last election saying, could we please get funding to rehab the library? And people did not see the value in that. And the explanation in discussing it with him, just in general, because he said, why should I care about the library? I do everything online. And I tried to explain to him what I said earlier. It is an investment in the totality of the community. People coming here want to see that your schools are strong, that your libraries are plentiful, that they have good places to live, safe places to live, that they have fun things to do like we have in our downtown and other parts of the region, and that you have a vital cultural arts scene. It's very important to any sort of attraction that we do.
Our goal, of course, is $20 million, but it doesn't really stop there.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep going back and saying, well, what if we had done this in the 1960s? What would $20 million, grown through various different investments, be today? It would be something like $250 million, $250 million for Roanoke in the arts community. I mean, it's a wonderful thought for me, because I'm seeing violin play in the cornices of our buildings, and just the kind of creative energy that would bring and what that would do for our community. I don't think it can be understated. It's a question if it can even be imagined. Mm-hmm. It definitely drives us forward, and we really do appreciate the way in which the city has been a participant and been engaged in this. And I think that is a testament to communities like ours, where here you at the head of economic development, and you are engaged in this effort, and that whether it's city council or the city manager's office, there is an appreciation of what that can mean as an economic catalyst. I just hope that we can continue to sustain the effort, because we know that there's a lot of competing priorities and challenges that the city faces. But this one, for me, seems singular in terms of what it could do as a catalyst to the future of our community.
One of the things I really like about our city council and our city management is they're focused on these kinds of things. Obviously, there's a whole list of things that they need to consider, but they do consider that entire spectrum of things, and I think the arts is in there as well. So, and one of the things that you talked about, if we'd done this years ago, where would we be now? But I think there's a lot of communities that would look at what the endowment is doing here and say, God, I wish we were that far ahead. So even if you're starting here, you've got to start somewhere, and once you do, the great things can happen from that.